Part of the reason I wanted to do this show is because A Ward and I started a mock draft. And so we were supposed to go 4 teams a week leading up to the NFL draft, which is tomorrow. Round one is tomorrow. I'm thinking about doing something special for the draft. We'll see. We might have to postpone it until next year because we're people with jobs who has a lot going on. My guy Ward has one of the biggest battles of his career coming up this weekend, and so he's prepping for that. So we'll see what happens. But I wanted to be on my I wanted to be on my smack white. I wanted to complete the objective. And so I am going to do the final 8 picks of this mock draft. So without further ado, if you've been following us, like I said, we had been going week by week, about 4 teams a week, going through making picks in this mock draft all the way to 32, which the Chiefs have the final pick in the first round. I am super interested to see what's going to take place, who's going to trade up, you know, and I think this particular draft season, uh, I think this particular draft season, there hasn't been a ton of storylines, right? We know who the number one pick is going to be. It's going to be Caleb Williams. And so I feel like the NFL media has tried to create storylines to draw people in and get them interested, right? To create headlines. So at a certain point, it was, oh, well, JJ McCarthy could be the number 2 overall pick, or he could be the number 3 overall pick, and Drake May is starting to fall. Now it's Jaden Daniels is not happy with Washington and having, the eliminate where you had the 4 quarterbacks all in town at the same time with the Commanders owner. Now it was a certain couple of weeks ago. Oh man, we could have 6 quarterbacks go in the first round. Michael Penix is rising. Bo Nix rising. Like they could go to Minnesota, or they could go to Denver, right? Like all these fabricated storylines to try to create interest around this event. Now the story is the day before the mock is that, oh, teams are going to be aggressive and trading up and going to get as many offensive tackles because that's what people are really targeting. And so I hope that we as fans have been savvy enough to cut through the noise and not buy into all of the clickbait that the media has tried to sell us, right? These guys right now are like during the tax season when you got the guy out there spinning the board and he's doing the Charleston and he's doing the jig and he's trying to wave you into the tax place, to the Liberty tax place, so you can go get your taxes done. That's what's happening right now. It's a lot of carnival barking happening in the media as we get ready for this draft, right? But here we are. We're going to go through these final 8 picks on the clock right now. Got the Green Bay Packers. You see what Pro Football Focus has as their needs. And I think it's interesting, right? Like to me, I look at a couple of positions. I do look at the offensive line position. There's a Graham Barton from Duke. There's a Jordan Morgan from Arizona. And I think Nate Wiggins from a cornerback from Clemson. To me, if I'm the GM, that's the pick that I'm looking at making. And here's why. Because they drafted Eric Stokes at corner, I believe, in the second round, but he has not made the splash that Green Bay thought he would make. And so for me, with this pick, I'm going to take Nate Wiggins, cornerback from Clemson, one of the best cornerbacks in the nation last year, as their pick to try to shore up that secondary. And maybe they push Eric Stokes to be the backup corner, or Keyshawn Nick, or at least put it to you like this. At least they create the competition going into camp of it's Wiggins versus Stokes for that opposite slot position or opposite corner position to Jair Alexander, who's one of the best cornerbacks in the game. So I'm going to go Nate Wiggins. And I think also, to me, this creates a depth issue because Jair Alexander has been banged up the last couple of years. Injuries in their secondary have been an issue as a whole for Green Bay the last couple of years. So drafting a Nate Wiggins to add depth, maybe some competition for that opposite corner position of Jair Alexander, that is the pick for the Green Bay Packers for me. So we're going to make that selection. All right, so next up, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay made a commitment to Mike. Man, what is Mike's last name? Mike Evans, excuse me. They made a commitment to Mike Evans, re-signing him in free agency. They also made a commitment to Baker Mayfield, bringing him back. So I feel like offensively, they're kind of set. You know, they still have their wide receivers intact. Man, I can see his name. I'm going to have to pull up their depth chart. Chris Godwin, excuse me. They got Chris Godwin. They got Mike Evans. They got Rachaad White at running back, Cade Otton at tight end. I think they're pretty set on the offensive side of the ball. I also think that they're pretty set on the offensive line for the most part. To me, defensive line and corner, because they traded away Carlton Davis. And to me, let me pull up their depth chart because I want to make sure I get this young man's name right. He's number 35 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but at corner, he was a mark last year, right? He got beat a lot. Jamel Dean, he got torched a lot last year, and so I'm looking at the secondary in particular, and I'm looking at TJ Tampa out of Iowa State, looking at Ennis Rakestraw from Mizzou. On the D line, I'm looking at Chop Robinson and I'm looking at Darius Robinson. And you guys might think this is a reach. I'm pretty sure that some draft analysts might think this is a reach, but I'm going to go TJ Tampa. TJ Tampa is, I think he's 6'2" corner out of Iowa State. I'm not going to pretend and act like I've been breaking down the tape and I can break down all of what he does well and what he doesn't do well. But I do think if I remember looking at some of the draft breakdown of him, he's a good cover corner. He's a physical corner. And I think that is one of the hallmarks of that Tampa defense. And so I'm going to go with TJ Tampa as the Carlton Davis replacement for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All right. So next up on the clock, so is the Arizona Cardinals. So here's the thing. In my earlier mock, if let's go back up to the top, I know people said they're going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. I had them taking Joe Alt because I felt like the Cardinals needed to solidify their left tackle for the next 10 to 12 years, right? And so I said they had another pick in the first round. This is where they could go receiver, and this is where we're going receiver. And we're going A.D. Mitchell. We're going A.D. Mitchell. His running mate from Texas, Xavier Worthy, I think is someone, if I'm in this position that I'm considering, maybe a Lab McConkey, but I'm going A.D. Mitchell. That gives them somebody with size, someone who can burn you deep, and who's a decent route runner. So I'm going with A.D. Mitchell for the Cardinals. Here's a team who needs a lot. This is a team that needs a lot. They let a lot of guys walk in free agency. Obviously, they got rid of their all-pro wide receiver, Stephon Diggs, in a trade. And for it, to me, when I looked at how this board was shaking out, my original thought was, oh, this is Xavier Worthy. They got to go wide receiver here, right? They got to start to build back up that wide receiver room. But listening to how Brandon Beane has spoken about the wide receiver room and saying that, well, we just need guys who are going to play the right way, if you will. And I'm looking at Jerzon Newton still on this board. And I'm saying to myself, if I'm Brandon Beane, I'm getting that guy. And I'm trying to, if the game plan is we don't need a true number one receiver, if the game plan is wide receiver by committee, and I think the tight ends are going to figure a lot more heavily into the passing game equation for the Bills than they have in previous years, running the ball both with Josh Allen and with James Cook. I think that right now we're trying to build that. They're looking at the Chiefs blueprint is what essentially what I'm getting at. They're looking at the Chiefs blueprint and saying, we need to get like that. And so how do you do that? The Chiefs built a great defense through the draft and some timely free agent signings. And I think that is the pick for the Buffalo Bills. Jerzon, or as everybody's calling him now, Johnny Newton, for whatever reason. Johnny Newton is the pick out of Illinois on the interior to pair him with Ed Oliver and try to wreak some havoc up the middle. Because again, following that Chiefs blueprint, Who was the game wrecker in a lot of key critical moments? Chris Jones. So Jerzon Newton off the board to the Buffalo Bills.